I want to give you a view of hiring from the inside. This is probably a perspective you haven't gotten before, and there are some tips and some tricks that you can learn by understanding what it's like to be a hiring manager and someone who's actively involved in the planning process and the business side of hiring. So let's get right into it. So what's it look like when you're me? Well, the first thing that I have to do in order to get a job posted is to get it budgeted. This is a part that you probably have never even heard of before. So when I'm looking at helping a business ramp up their data science and machine learning team, typically I've built out something called a product roadmap. That's going to lay out everything the business works on for the next usually 2 to 3 years, sometimes even longer than that. But as part of that product roadmap, I'm going to also create a staffing plan or hiring plan. What that means is in order to deliver all of these products on time, it's often necessary either to just hire new people who can do the same things because we need more scale, or this may require new talent, people who we don't have right now, who have skills and capabilities that we don't have right now. Sometimes a data science team is very model development centric. And so I'm going to have to hire for more complex projects, researchers. I'm going to have to hire data engineers, machine learning engineers, analysts, and a whole number of other data science roles. And you may be interested in one of those roles. So now I have created the product roadmap. I've got a staffing plan, which means I understand each quarter, and businesses run on quarterly cycles, which is every 3 months. You've got a certain amount of budget that's allocated to the year, but typically it's phased in over quarters. And so your hiring cycles will follow that. So I will be able to open up job requirements in anticipation of hiring in Q1 or Q2, which is quarter one, first quarter, quarter two, second quarter. And so I'll have this laid out. Sometimes I'll even have it laid out for years. So I get the budget annually. I may know that I'm hiring and I want to hire a year out, but I don't have that budget yet. However, I do have budget allocated for this year, specifically for this quarter and probably for next quarter. And so I'm going to start sending out job requirements for you to send an application into me for. And I'm going to do that on a quarterly cycle. So when's a good time for you to start looking for new jobs? Right before the beginning of a quarter and right after the beginning of quarters. So when do quarters start? January, April, July, October. Those are your beginning months of quarters. So 2 weeks before each one of those months is usually a great place and great time to start applying. However, remember that we have Thanksgiving and Christmas in the United States. And so November all the way through the first week of January, it's a dead zone. In that case, January is an excellent time to hire or an excellent time to be applying. Also realize that going up to Thanksgiving, things get really, really urgent. And so that beginning of November, I am starting to become aware that if I don't get somebody hired by Thanksgiving, I might as well give up on getting them until January. So the beginning of November is one of those off-cycle times where you'll see demand peak. So those are your best timings to get in front of me because I'm going to have a pretty good sense of urgency to bring you in or to get one of those positions filled, because if I don't fill positions, some businesses will actually take those jobs away from me. They'll say, look, you've had this position open for 3 months. You seem to be doing just fine without it. Yank. Again, I have a strong sense of urgency, and even recruiters get the same sort of pressure from hiring managers to say, look, this has been open for a quarter, or this needs to be filled by, I have work slated for this. And so understanding that quarterly cycle is extremely important. Now, what does it look like when you send your resume in? From my perspective, I get emails. And depending upon how bad the applicant tracking system is, I can get hundreds of these things. If I'm working with recruiters that are not that great at screening, again, I get hundreds of resumes and they're typically all over the place. Some are amazing, some are terrible. Some of the amazing ones that I get, I then can't get a hold of the candidate. The candidate actually wasn't interested. It's a stale resume. And those are terrible. So I hate going through emails and applicant tracking systems and recruiters. None of those are efficient ways for me to find good candidates because I spend so much time just wading through trash. So you don't want to be in that sort of pile that most hiring managers hate digging through. I am available on LinkedIn, and a lot of hiring managers are pretty active on LinkedIn, looking at direct messages, connection requests. It's an easier way to get in front of hiring managers because you've sort of bypassed this filter. And I'll be honest, I am way happier talking directly to a candidate from the beginning than I am having to go through a resume that I know doesn't really reflect who you are. Also, referrals are huge. So if you know somebody that's working in my group, if I'm hiring, I'm going to talk to them first, say, hey, you know anybody? And if they've got a referral or a recommendation, that's going to be the first person that we're bringing in to interview. So you don't just manage or don't just network with the hiring manager, network with people inside of the team. And when that team starts hiring, oftentimes you'll get referred to the hiring manager directly. And like I said, you're at the top of the list because the alternative is, I hate dealing with them. So that's one of the easier ways to get in. Now, what's my hiring process look like? The first thing I'm going to do is call you in for a phone screen. I just want to talk to you on the phone for about 30 minutes. I want to understand whether my comprehension of what it is that you can do is correct. Can you actually do this? Do you have some experience? Do you speak competently about what I need you to do on a day-to-day basis? And that's the phone screen. At that point, the job's really yours to lose. So make sure if you're in a phone screen, if I say, hey, call me, let's talk, get directly into your capabilities and tell me exactly what you can do. Talk about how your experience is applicable to the particular role that I want to bring you in for, and ask me questions. Try to understand yourself exactly what it is that I'm hiring for, because I want to use that phone screen to talk to you about that. Ask about the interview process, because I want to give you enough information that you're successful in the interview process, but also for you to self-screen. If you hear me talking about the role and it's not what you expected, I want you to say that to me, and it saves both of us time. Same thing with the interview process. If I'm going to be asking you questions that aren't to your strengths, or if my interview process really doesn't play to those strengths, back out. And it's good, again, for you to not waste your time and not get pulled into something that can be demoralizing. If you get through the phone screen, I'm going to call you in for an interview. Now, the interview is going to be in a group setting. Who am I going to pick for the interview? I'm typically going to pick anyone that you have to work with. That can mean from a technical standpoint, but it could also mean stakeholders. It could also mean users, people that you have to interact with in leadership. So you could be interviewing more than one time with different groups, or one time with a large, diverse group of people. Good thing to ask about in the phone screen so that you're ready for it. But when you're in the interview, you're going to be getting asked questions from a number of different backgrounds potentially. Try to understand who's in the interview and what their role, what is it that they're assessing? What are they trying to determine about you that would make them decide to hire you? Try to ask, what does everyone do and what do you do with the data scientist? And then tailor your answers to questions to each one of those roles. So don't obviously give a technical answer to somebody who's a non-technical, potentially stakeholder, senior leader, or user. That's one of the best things I can tell you is I want you to succeed in the interview. And I'm not going to try to trip you up. I have a vested interest in hiring you because if I don't hire you, I have to do this all over again. So I'm not looking for an excuse to get rid of you. I'm looking for reasons to hire you. And a lot of hiring managers are that way. They're not looking to exclude you. We're looking to bring you in as quickly as possible, but we also have to assess your capabilities to make sure that when you get here, you're going to be able to contribute or at least rapidly come up to speed and be a contributor right away. So that's the hiring cycle. What happens when I decide I want to send you an offer letter? Well, I'm going to give you a call, say I want to send you an offer letter. Typically, it's going to be an email, and I'm going to outline things like a signing bonus. your salary, any bonuses or annual incentives that go along with the salary. You can ask about benefits. Typically, there's a lot of benefits, especially in technology companies. So I'm probably sending you something that's pretty substantial, and I might be turning you over to the human resources group to work back and forth with potentially salary negotiations. It's totally valid for you to look at the salary and say, hey, I want a different bonus structure. I'd like a different compensation structure. Or you could have questions about benefits. You might have questions about vacation or family leave. All of those are fair game, and they're just fine, especially if I've turned you over to somebody from HR to ask about from the beginning. And again, if you have a counter offer for the salary that I've sent out originally, feel free to send it back as long as it's reasonable. Also, ask who offered you the salary. While we often have bands, when I talked about budgeting, we don't just budget one fixed number for a person. There's a band. And so there's a salary range from bottom, which would be really an entry level for that particular role, to someone who is almost ready to be promoted into the next role. And that'll be the top end of the salary range. And so the salary offer that we give you is our best guess, or it's going to be based on your previous compensation. We may throw in incentives to try to get you to join sooner. Signing bonuses, big incentive that we'll often use, and you can ask for signing bonuses. You can also ask for a combination of annual bonuses, maybe a combination of guaranteed plus performance-based bonuses, or a higher percentage of salary that's based on performance bonuses. That's a great way. If you're talking to someone who can't budge on salary, ask about performance-related bonusing, because obviously that's a win for both sides. You're a higher performer. You're going to get paid for that. No one loses in that case, and you'll often be able to negotiate a bit higher compensation based on that. Now, if you're going for a very senior level role, understand that if you've gone from maybe a principal at a mid-sized company to someone who's in a very senior staff role in a larger company, compensation is, there are so many things that you can negotiate when it comes to compensation. You can negotiate more vacation time. You can negotiate flexible hours. You can negotiate an expense account or living expenses account, or you can actually negotiate someone buying part of your house, paying for moving expenses, paying for you to rent a house in the city if you're moving to a larger city. You can negotiate so much in more senior level roles. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to ask for things that you need in order to make that role work, especially if it's around something logistical, like moving to a new city. All of those things are typically on the table. You can even ask for help placing your significant other or getting your children into a particular school. All of that's on the table. So like I said, for a more senior level role, don't be afraid to ask for different types of compensation and make that part of the negotiation. Now, finally, I've sent you the offer letter. You've accepted. I'm going to bring you in and start the onboarding process. You'll want to have some sort of idea of what it is that your first week's going to look like, because you'll want to prepare yourself. It's kind of a crazy time, and the better impression you make, number one, the less stress you're going to have. When you're confident in your performance that first week, it really sets you up for everything that comes afterwards. But you're also getting me more comfortable with you, and I'm going to give you more advanced work faster. That's important because the better the impression you make in that first 90 days, the more likely it is that you're going to stick with the company and just be successful in the role. So think about your first week. Think about onboarding. Ask some questions of me. What would it take for you to be successful, or what have other people who've successfully transitioned into the role quickly and become contributors from the beginning done? What's worked in the past, and what should you be ready for and prepped for? So that's hiring from my perspective. That's what it looks like from my chair, and some of the insights I can give you based on my view and what's possible